Assalamu alaikum and welcome to topic 4, which is Bloom's taxonomy and smart learning outcomes. And as the title suggests, those who fail to plan to fail. So teachers need to be well prepared if they want their lessons to be successful. Now, the first topic or subtopic is Bloom's taxonomy. And as you can see, it's divided into 6 levels. Levels 4, 5, 6 are the high order thinking skills, whereas levels 1, 2, 3 would be the low order thinking. And we need to pay particular attention to the verbs. In our next slide, we can see a list of verbs, and the levels of thinking have been divided into the 6 categories, and we can now see that under knowledge, we have verbs like define, identify, describe, label, and list. And understand, we have explain, describe, interpret. And then if we move up to the high order thinking, we've got under create, we've got design, compose, create, plan. And under evaluate, we've got criticize, evaluate, appraise, and judge. So we're going to be needing these verbs when we want to make our learning outcomes, as will be seen shortly. Now, learning outcomes need to be smart learning outcomes, and these are the criteria for a smart learning outcome: specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and timely. We can simplify that a little bit by this model of Moore, where we say that the learning outcome should be measurable, observable, and reasonable. Now, critical thinking and creative thinking are skills that we want to include in our lessons, and so we need to think, how can we do this? So let's take a look at Fassion's model of critical thinking, which has 6 levels, which are interpretation, analysis, evaluation, inference, explanation, and self-regulation. And those are quite similar to Bloom's taxonomy in some ways, but there's a couple of different ones. Like self-regulation is really about muhasabah, evaluating oneself. And of course, that requires us to think about ourselves and to reflect on what we've done and what we've said and try to evaluate that. We'll talk more about this in our next session. Here are the sub-skills of the critical thinking skills. So under interpretation, we've got students who would be categorizing or clarifying meaning. Under analysis, we've got them examining and identifying arguments. Under evaluation, they will be comparing against criteria or judging the credibility of statements, etc. So these skills and sub-skills, we need to build them into our lesson plan and into our learning outcomes, as will be seen. So here we see Bloom's taxonomy again in another shape, and it's beautifully colored, so we can see and remember the different levels. And so our next job is to make those learning outcomes, those smart learning outcomes that will guide our lesson and our lesson plan. So step 1 is to decide what exactly you want the learners to learn. And then, as an example, maybe I want my students to learn the 9 events of Gagne. So then I have to ask myself, what do I want them to actually do to show that they've learned? And so I'm going to say, in this case, I want them to recall Gagne's 9 events. So then we go to Bloom and we select a suitable verb, and I'm going to choose a high order verb, a high order thinking verb, compose, because I want the students to create something. So then I make my sentence with the verb, and I say, students will compose a short song about Gagne's 9 events. So now I have my learning outcome, and I have to check that it's smart, that it's specific, that it's measurable, that it's attainable, that it's relevant, and that it's time-based. This particular one isn't time-bound. I suppose I could say in a lesson or in half a lesson, maybe I should add the time, how long I want the students to spend composing this song. And maybe another learning outcome, a second learning outcome, could be that I want the students to record the song, so they actually have to sing it and record it. So now you can see how the writing of learning outcomes works. We now need to turn our attention to writing a lesson plan. And here are the 7 essential elements of a lesson plan. And we're looking at online lessons because of the situation we're in. And so I'm listing these 7 items as follows. Details, that's the the age of the students, the ability of the students, how long the lesson is. The second would be the smart learning outcomes. Third is the tools that you're going to use, the online resources. It could be a video, it could be a quiz, it could be an application. Number four would be engaging in interesting activities or tasks. Number five, how am I going to assess the learning and the learning outcomes? Number six, did I include critical and creative thinking? And lastly, seven, which is crucial for online learning, clear instructions and clear marking rubrics, so we know how we get the marks and what we have to do. So let's try and remember those. I've made a mnemonic here to remember the 7 elements. Do liars really think Allah can impress? The grammar's a bit out, but I think it shows how we can remember those parts. And I think by looking at my mnemonic, I can say that D